Lokoz Boxing. Today we're going to talk about how Canelo Alvarez's negotiations with Caleb Plant are now linked or tied into Manny Pacquiao's fight with Errol the Truth Spence as far as conversation goes. You may be wondering what these two fights would have to do with one another conversation wise or as a comparison. So we'll dive right into that. To start with, we'll talk about Canelo's negotiations with Caleb Plant. As you may have heard by now, they were pretty close to making a deal so that the fight could take place on September. Canelo's traditional fight dates, which hasn't occurred recently, but that's generally when he looks to make the fight happen. And I guess the deal breaker that occurred according to PBC side or Caleb Plant is the fact that Canelo wanted to have a part in the contract that if Caleb Plant were to be injured and were unable to fight by the contractual fight date, then Canelo would still get the same amount of money as if he were fighting Caleb Plant, even if he's going to have a replacement fight him, if PBC were going to choose someone else to replace Plant in case of Plant's injury. So there was a lot of criticism from fans and people who dislike Canelo also about why Canelo would put the stipulation in the contract and how it didn't make sense, and to one extent on how it may have been looked as a diva request. But if we fast forward and we look at what's going on with Manny Pacquiao's fight with Errol the Truth Spence, we know that as of a few hours ago, yesterday, we learned that that fight is no longer taking place. A fight everybody was anticipating. The fight is no longer going to happen because of an injury that occurred to Errol Spence, and I hope he gets better. Apparently he has an eye injury, and it's not that there's anyone to blame about, the eye injury or anything like that, but now Pacquiao, he had a goal. He wanted to fight the best. He wanted to prove himself, which he doesn't have to, but he wanted to push his limits and see how far he can take his greatness. And at the same time, he had a certain amount of money that he was already expecting from this big bout. What ended up happening is now that Errol Spence is injured, PBC is going to throw in a B-side replacement, Jordanis Ugas, which is great. I have no problem with him. He looks like a solid fighter. However, this is not the fighter that Pacquiao wanted to fight. With that being said, Pacquiao is not going to get the same amount of money that he would have gotten from fighting Errol Spence. So, in a way, Pacquiao is now locked in to a fight that he would have not agreed to, more than likely. And he's also locked into receiving the income he would have not expected to have received from this fight. So we see right away that if we go back to Canelo's way of thinking and his team's way of thinking when negotiating these deals, they are trying to avoid from things like this occurring. They are not trying to waste their time. So if they are going to sign a contract where they are going to fight Caleb Plant, they want to make sure that not only does something like this doesn't occur, but if it does occur, that they still make the same amount of money and not waste their time as the A side. Another thing that many people did not look into or think about is that PBC is really itching to lock Canelo in for more than one fight for their personal agenda. However, Canelo is a free fighter. He doesn't really have a long-term contract with any type of promotions. So this is the last thing he would want. At the end of the day, PBC could easily use this type of tactic to lock Canelo in to fight somebody else and then fight Caleb Plant. We see what happened with many recent fights, how they've been either postponed, delayed, or canceled or stretched due to fighters getting COVID. So we do live in a world of uncertainty in boxing, now more than ever with COVID. And now, although I'm not saying Errol Spence is one of the persons using this to this advantage, because I'm sure he was looking forward to this fight. It was a fight that he looks like he was taking very serious, and he was not underestimating Manny Pacquiao by the looks of it. However, other promotions, other boxers, other fighters would be quick to use this tactic and either claim an injury or claim to have COVID to lock in a fighter for more than one fight. To lock in a fighter or delay a fight if needed for a very long time, ruining the plans of the team that is just looking to get the fight done. So now we know why Canelo Alvarez wanted to have that stipulation in the contract. We know why it makes sense. We know that he's not trying to waste his time, and we know he's trying to protect himself from PBC trying to pull something off where they, say all of a sudden Plant is injured, now you fight this B-side and you get less money and you're actually stuck. And then after you beat that B-side fighter with PBC, now you get to fight Plant. So they could easily use that to their advantage to trick him to fight more than once on PBC. So think about that, people. Let me know what y'all think. If you dislike the video, go ahead and hit a thumbs down. If you like what you hear, subscribe and hit thumbs up. Lokoz Boxing.